I never imagined that the person who would deliver the cruelest blow to my heart would be my own daughter, the child I carried for 9 months, nursed through sleepless nights, and loved with every fiber of my being. But there I was, standing in our driveway on what seemed like an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, feeling the ground beneath my feet crumble as her words cut through me like shards of glass. The sun was beginning its descent, casting long shadows across the pavement, but there was no warmth in the air between us, only the cold sting of her contempt. She stood there with her friends, a pack of perfectly polished teenagers with their designer clothes and entitled smirks, and I could see the calculation in her eyes. She was about to perform for them, and I was going to be her unwilling stage prop. My old car sat behind me, faithful as always, a 2008 Honda Civic, with more miles on it than I care to count. Paint faded from years of sun and rain, a small dent on the passenger side from when she was learning to drive and clipped a mailbox. To me, that car represented survival, perseverance, the countless sacrifices I'd made to keep us moving forward. To her, it was apparently nothing more than a source of embarrassment. "Oh my God, Mom, you're not seriously still driving that piece of junk, are you?" Her voice carried across the driveway, loud enough for the neighbors to hear, dripping with disdain. "I mean, look at it. It's literally falling apart. Don't you care about how you make me look?" The laughter that followed was like nails on a chalkboard, sharp, mocking, designed to wound. Her friends joined in, their giggles creating a chorus of cruelty that seemed to echo off every surface around us. I felt my cheeks burn with shame, not because of the car, but because of the realization that my own daughter could look at me with such disgust. This wasn't teenage rebellion or a moment of poor judgment. This was calculated humiliation, performed for an audience, designed to elevate her status by diminishing mine. I wanted to disappear, to sink into the ground and escape the weight of their stares, their whispered comments, their barely contained laughter. "Seriously, when was the last time you even washed it?" she continued, emboldened by her friend's reactions. "It's so embarrassing. I told Jessica's mom I'd get a ride with her to the mall because I literally cannot be seen in that thing anymore. What would people think?" The way she said "that thing" made my heart clench. She wasn't just talking about the car. She was talking about everything it represented, everything I represented. My struggles, my limitations, my inability to provide her with the luxury she felt she deserved. I tried to find my voice, to say something, anything that might bridge the growing chasm between us. "Honey, this car has been good to us. It's reliable, it's paid for, and it gets us where we need to go." My words sounded weak even to my own ears, a feeble attempt to defend not just the vehicle, but my entire existence. She rolled her eyes so dramatically I thought they might fall out of her head. "Reliable? Mom, it's ancient. And that sound it makes when you start it? It's mortifying. I can't believe you don't see how pathetic this is." She gestured dismissively at the car, at me, at everything that made up our life together. Other moms drive nice cars. Other moms care about their image. Other moms don't make their daughters die of embarrassment every single day. The word pathetic hit me like a physical blow. I felt something inside me crack, a fissure that ran deeper than disappointment, deeper than hurt. This was the child I had worked 3 jobs to support when she was little. This was the girl I had stayed up all night with when she had pneumonia, holding her hand and singing lullabies until the fever broke. This was the teenager I had driven to countless activities in this very car: soccer practice, dance recitals, sleepovers, school events, never once complaining about the gas money or the time. As they walked away, their laughter trailing behind them like smoke, I stood alone in the driveway with my faithful old car. The silence that followed was deafening, filled with the weight of everything unsaid, everything unappreciated, everything taken for granted. I placed my hand on the car's warm hood, feeling the familiar vibration of the engine cooling down, and I made a promise to myself. This would not be the end of my story. This moment of humiliation would not define me. Let me tell you who I really am, because clearly my daughter has forgotten. I am Sarah Mitchell, 52 years old, and I have spent the last 25 years of my life being the kind of mother most children only dream of having. I wasn't born into privilege or handed opportunities on a silver platter. Everything I achieved, every comfort I provided for my family, came through sheer determination, countless sacrifices, and an unwavering belief that love could conquer any obstacle. When Emma was born, I was 27 and married to a man I thought would be my partner for life. David seemed like everything I wanted: charming, ambitious, full of promises about the future we'd build together. But life has a way of revealing people's true colors, and by the time Emma turned 3, David had shown me his: the color of abandonment, of broken promises, of a man who couldn't handle the responsibility of being a father and husband. He left us one rainy Thursday morning, taking nothing but his clothes and leaving behind a mountain of debt and a little girl who kept asking when Daddy was coming home. I could have crumbled. God knows there were nights when I wanted to. But every time I looked at Emma's innocent face, her trusting eyes, her small hand reaching for mine, I found strength I didn't know I possessed. I made a vow that night after David left. My daughter would never want for anything if I could help it. She would never feel the abandonment I felt, never question whether she was loved, never doubt that she was the most important thing in my world. Those early years were a masterclass in survival. I worked as a receptionist during the day at a dental office, making barely above minimum wage but grateful for the health insurance. In the evenings, I cleaned offices downtown, dragging Emma with me because I couldn't afford childcare. She would do her homework in empty conference rooms while I vacuumed carpets and emptied trash cans. On weekends, I worked at a local diner, serving coffee and pancakes to families who had what I desperately wanted: stability, security, a father figure for their children. I remember one particularly difficult winter when Emma was 8. The heating bill was astronomical, and I had to choose between keeping the house warm and buying her the winter coat she needed. I chose the coat, of course, and spent that month wearing every sweater I owned, layered like armor against the cold. Emma never knew. I made sure she never knew about any of the sacrifices, any of the sleepless nights spent calculating bills, any of the meals I skipped so she could have seconds. But it wasn't just about survival. I wanted to give her experiences, opportunities, joy. When she showed interest in dance at age 6, I found a way to pay for lessons, even though it meant eating ramen noodles for dinner more nights than I care to remember. When she wanted to join the school soccer team, I worked extra shifts to afford the equipment and registration fees. Every birthday party was a production. Every Christmas morning was magical. Every school event found me in the front row cheering louder than any other parent. I taught myself to braid hair by watching YouTube videos so Emma would always look perfect for school. I learned to sew so I could alter her clothes when we couldn't afford new ones. I became an expert at stretching grocery budgets, finding free activities, making our small apartment feel like a palace through sheer creativity and love. I was her mother, her father, her cheerleader, her protector, her safe harbor in every storm. As she grew older and our situation improved, I had worked my way up to office manager at the dental practice and started doing freelance bookkeeping on weekends. I made sure she had everything her friends had: the latest phone, trendy clothes, money for movies, and mall trips with friends. I drove her everywhere she needed to go, waited in parking lots during her activities, attended every game, every recital, every school function. I was the mother who volunteered for field trips, who organized fundraisers, who other parents could count on to help with carpools and emergency pickups. I thought I was raising a grateful, loving daughter. I thought all those years of putting her first, of showing her through my actions what unconditional love looked like, would create a bond between us that nothing could break. I thought she understood that every sacrifice I made was an investment in her happiness, her future, her dreams. I thought she saw me as her hero, the woman who had overcome every obstacle to give her a beautiful life. I was wrong about so many things. Somewhere along the way, my sacrifices became expectations. My love became something she took for granted. My efforts to give her everything became, in her eyes, evidence that she deserved everything. The grateful little girl who used to hug me tight and whisper, "I love you, Mommy," had transformed into a teenager who saw my limitations as personal failings, my struggles as embarrassments, my love as something she was entitled to rather than something precious to be treasured. But I didn't see it happening. Love, I've learned, can be blind in the most dangerous ways. I kept giving, kept sacrificing, kept putting her needs above my own, believing that eventually she would appreciate everything I had done. I believed that the foundation of love I had built would be strong enough to weather any storm. I never imagined that the storm would come from within our own home, from the very person I had given everything to protect. The change didn't happen overnight. Like most heartbreaks, it crept in slowly, disguised as normal teenage behavior, easy to dismiss as a phase she'd grow out of. Looking back now, I can see the signs clearly, the subtle shifts in her tone, the eye rolls that became more frequent, the way she started looking at me as if I were somehow lacking. But at the time, I made excuses for her, rationalized her behavior, convinced myself that this was just part of growing up. It started when Emma turned 15. She had begun spending more time with a new group of friends, girls from wealthier families who lived in the upscale part of town. Their parents were doctors, lawyers, business owners, people who drove luxury cars and took vacations to Europe. Suddenly, everything about our life seemed insufficient through Emma's eyes. Our modest apartment, which I had worked so hard to make comfortable and welcoming, became cramped and embarrassing. The clothes I bought her, carefully selected within our budget, became cheap and outdated. The first real sting came during a parent-teacher conference. I had taken time off work, dressed in my best outfit, and arrived early because I was proud of Emma's academic achievements. As I sat in the hallway waiting, I overheard her talking to her friend Madison in the bathroom. "I can't believe my mom wore that jacket," Emma was saying. "It's so old and ugly." Madison's mom always looks so put together, like she actually cares about her appearance. Sometimes I wonder if my mom even tries. The words hit me like a slap. That jacket was one of my favorites, a navy blazer I had bought 3 years earlier for job interviews, carefully maintained and treasured because it made me feel professional and confident. To hear my own daughter describe it as old and ugly felt like she was describing me the same way. I sat in that hallway, my cheeks burning with shame, wondering when I had become such a disappointment to the person whose opinion mattered most to me. The comments became more frequent after that. When I picked her up from school in my Honda Civic, she would slump down in the passenger seat as if trying to hide. "Mom, could you maybe park around the corner next time?" she asked one day. "It's just, everyone sees your car, and it's kind of embarrassing." I tried to laugh it off, to make light of her concern, but inside I felt a familiar ache, the same feeling I'd had as a child when other kids made fun of my second-hand clothes. Dinner conversations became minefields. Emma would casually mention how Madison's family was renovating their kitchen, how Jessica's mom had gotten a new BMW, how Sarah's parents were taking her to Paris for spring break. Each comment felt like a comparison, a subtle reminder of everything I couldn't provide. When I suggested we plan a weekend trip to the mountains, something within our budget that I thought would be fun, she wrinkled her nose and said, "Can't we go somewhere actually cool? Like somewhere I could post pictures without being embarrassed?" The gift-giving occasions became particularly painful. For her 16th birthday, I had saved for months to buy her a beautiful necklace from a local jewelry store. It wasn't expensive by some standards, but it represented weeks of extra work, skipped lunches, and careful budgeting. When she opened it, her smile seemed forced. "Oh, thanks, Mom. It's nice." Later, I saw her showing her friends the designer bracelet Madison had given her, her face lighting up in a way it hadn't when she'd opened my gift. The worst part was how she began treating me in front of others. At school events, she would walk slightly ahead of me, as if we weren't together. When her friends were over, she would introduce me with a tone that suggested I was an inconvenience rather than her mother. "This is my mom," she'd say, the words flat and dismissive, before quickly steering the conversation away from me. I felt invisible, irrelevant, like a servant whose only purpose was to provide transportation and funding for her social life. One evening, I overheard her on the phone with Madison, complaining about having to stay home because I couldn't afford to give her money for another mall trip. "My mom is so cheap," she said, her voice carrying through the thin walls of our apartment. "She acts like $20 is some huge amount. Madison's mom just hands her a credit card and tells her to have fun. I wish I had a normal mom who actually understood what teenagers need." The word normal echoed in my head for days. What did that make me? Abnormal? Deficient? I had worked so hard to be everything she needed, to fill the role of both mother and father, to create a stable, loving home despite our financial limitations. But apparently, none of that mattered if I couldn't compete with the lifestyle her friends enjoyed. I started second-guessing everything: my clothes, my car, our home, even my job. I found myself apologizing for things I had never been ashamed of before. When Emma complained about our apartment being too small, I heard myself saying, "I know it's not perfect, honey, but it's the best I can do right now." When she criticized my car, I promised to look into getting something newer, even though I knew it wasn't financially feasible. The saddest part was how I began to see myself through her eyes. The woman who had once felt proud of her resilience, her ability to provide for her daughter despite overwhelming odds, began to feel inadequate, embarrassing, not enough. I started avoiding school events where other parents would be present, afraid of the comparisons Emma might make. I began declining invitations to dinner with friends, worried that Emma would be ashamed of our modest lifestyle if anyone saw how we really lived. But even as the hurt accumulated, even as her comments became sharper and more frequent, I told myself this was temporary. Teenagers were supposed to be difficult, weren't they? She was just trying to figure out who she was, testing boundaries, asserting her independence. Surely, once she matured a little more, she would remember all the love I had given her, all the sacrifices I had made. Surely, she would come back to me. I was wrong about that too. Instead of growing out of her contempt, Emma seemed to be growing into it, becoming more comfortable with treating me as less than, more confident in her belief that I was somehow failing her. The foundation I thought was so solid, built on years of love and sacrifice, was cracking, and I was too afraid to admit how deep those cracks had become. If I thought the subtle digs and casual dismissals were painful, I was completely unprepared for what came next. Emma's contempt for me evolved from private embarrassment to public humiliation, and she seemed to take genuine pleasure in making me feel small. It was as if she had discovered a new power, the ability to wound me deeply, and she wielded it with the precision of a surgeon and the cruelty of a stranger. The turning point came during her junior year of high school. She had started dating a boy named Tyler, whose family owned a chain of successful restaurants in our city. Tyler drove a brand new Mustang convertible, wore designer clothes, and had the kind of casual confidence that comes from never having to worry about money. Emma was completely smitten, and suddenly, everything about our life became even more inadequate in comparison to his family's wealth. The first time Tyler came to pick Emma up for a date, I made the mistake of trying to be a welcoming mother. I had cleaned the apartment thoroughly, put out some snacks, and prepared to make small talk with this boy who was clearly important to my daughter. When they arrived, Emma practically pushed past me to get to her room, leaving Tyler standing awkwardly in our living room. I tried to engage him in conversation, asking about school, his interests, his plans for college. He was polite enough, but I could see him taking in our modest surroundings, the second-hand furniture, the small television, the family photos in discount store frames. When Emma emerged from her room, she took one look at the scene, and her face flushed with mortification. "Mom, we need to go," she said quickly, grabbing Tyler's arm and steering him toward the door. As they left, I heard her voice in the hallway. "Sorry about that. My mom can be so much sometimes. She doesn't really understand boundaries." The word much stung more than any direct insult could have. I wasn't being much. I was being a mother, trying to get to know the boy my daughter was dating. But in Emma's eyes, my natural maternal instincts were embarrassing, excessive, something to apologize for. Things escalated rapidly after that. Emma began making comments about me in front of Tyler, using him as an audience for her cruelty. During one particularly painful dinner at our kitchen table, she looked at my work clothes, a simple blouse and slacks I had worn to the dental office, and said, "Mom, you really need to update your wardrobe. Tyler's mom always looks so professional and put together. Maybe you could ask her for some fashion advice." Tyler shifted uncomfortably in his chair, clearly embarrassed by Emma's rudeness, but she didn't seem to notice or care. The public humiliations became more frequent and more vicious. At Emma's school awards ceremony, where she was receiving recognition for her academic achievements, I sat in the auditorium beaming with pride. I had taken the afternoon off work, bought a new dress for the occasion, and arrived early to get a good seat. When Emma's name was called, I stood up and applauded enthusiastically, my heart swelling with love and pride. Afterward, as we were leaving, Emma hissed at me, "Did you have to clap so loud? Everyone was staring. It was so embarrassing." Other parents know how to act appropriately at these things. I felt like I had been slapped. I had been celebrating my daughter's success, expressing the joy and pride that any parent would feel in that moment. But somehow, even my love for her had become a source of shame in her eyes. The comments about my appearance became relentless. "Mom, that lipstick color is all wrong for your skin tone. Those shoes went out of style years ago. Could you maybe do something with your hair before we go out? It looks so tired." Each criticism chipped away at my self-confidence, making me second-guess choices I had never questioned before. I started spending money I didn't have on new clothes, makeup, hair appointments, desperately trying to meet her impossible standards. But nothing I did was ever enough. When I bought a new outfit, it was trying too hard. When I got my hair styled, it was not quite right. When I attempted to update my makeup routine, I was overdoing it. I began to realize that the problem wasn't really my appearance or my choices. The problem was me in her eyes. I had become an embarrassment simply by existing. The cruelest moments came when she would compare me directly to other mothers. "Tyler's mom offered to take us shopping for prom dresses," she announced one day. "She said she knows all the best places and she has great taste. Thank God. Because honestly, Mom, if it were up to you, I'd end up looking like I shopped at a thrift store." The implication was clear. I had no taste, no style, no ability to help her with something as important as prom. When I offered to contribute to the prom dress fund, Emma actually laughed. "Mom, the dresses at the places Tyler's mom shops cost more than you make in a week. Just let her handle it, okay? This is important to me, and I can't afford to have it messed up." The casual dismissal of my financial contribution, the assumption that I couldn't possibly afford anything worthwhile, felt like a knife to the heart. The worst incident happened at a school fundraiser where I had volunteered to help with setup. I had taken a personal day from work, arrived early, and spent hours arranging tables and decorating the gymnasium. I was proud to be contributing to Emma's school community, to be the kind of involved parent I had always strived to be. When Emma arrived with her friends, she saw me across the room and her face went white with horror. She marched over to where I was hanging streamers and said in a voice loud enough for several people to hear, "Mom, what are you doing here? I didn't know you were volunteering for this." The way she said volunteering made it sound like something shameful, as if I had no right to be there. "Maybe you should go home and get ready. You look tired." The dismissal was public, humiliating, designed to make me feel like I didn't belong in her world. I left that night feeling smaller than I ever had in my life. I sat in my car in the school parking lot and cried, deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from somewhere I didn't know existed. This was my daughter, the child I had given everything for, and she was treating me like I was something to be ashamed of, something to hide from the world. But even then, even as the pain threatened to consume me, I told myself that love would win. I convinced myself that this was just a phase, that eventually Emma would see how much I loved her, how hard I had worked for her, how much I had sacrificed. I believed that the foundation of our relationship was strong enough to survive this storm. I had no idea that the worst was yet to come, that Emma's contempt for me was about to reach levels I couldn't have imagined. I had no idea that she was about to cross a line that would change everything between us forever. The final blow came on a Saturday morning in late spring, and it shattered what remained of my heart into pieces so small I wasn't sure they could ever be put back together. Emma had graduated high school the week before, and I had been planning a small celebration dinner. Nothing fancy, just the two of us at her favorite restaurant, a chance to acknowledge her achievement and talk about her plans for college. I had been looking forward to it for weeks, hoping it might be an opportunity to reconnect, to bridge the growing chasm between us. But Emma had other plans. She had been accepted to a prestigious university across the country, and Tyler's family had offered to throw her a graduation party at their country club. It was going to be an elaborate affair. Catered food, live music, all of her friends and their families invited. When she told me about it, I felt a familiar pang of inadequacy, knowing I could never compete with such generosity. But I was happy for her, truly happy that she would have such a wonderful celebration. What I didn't expect was to be uninvited from my own daughter's graduation party. "Mom, we need to talk," Emma said that Saturday morning, her tone serious in a way that immediately put me on edge. She was sitting at our kitchen table, her phone in her hands, looking anywhere but at me. "About the party tonight. I've been thinking, and I don't think it's a good idea for you to come." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually took a step backward, gripping the counter for support. "What do you mean? It's your graduation party. Of course I'm coming. I'm your mother." Emma finally looked at me then, and what I saw in her eyes was worse than anger or frustration. It was cold calculation, as if she had rehearsed this conversation and was now delivering lines she had practiced. That's exactly the problem, Mom. Tyler's family is really important in this town. There are going to be people there who could help with my future. Networking opportunities, you know? And honestly, I can't afford to be embarrassed. Embarrassed? By what? I asked, though I already knew the answer would destroy me. By you, Mom. By everything about you. She said it so matter-of-factly, as if she were commenting on the weather. Your clothes, your car, the way you act around other people. You try so hard to fit in, but you just don't. And tonight is too important for me to risk having you there, making things awkward. I felt like I was drowning, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Emma, I'm your mother. I raised you. I've been to every school event, every milestone, every important moment of your life. How can you not want me at your graduation party? She shrugged, actually shrugged, as if my pain was inconsequential. Look, I know you've done a lot for me, okay? But this isn't about the past. This is about my future. Tyler's parents are connected to people at my university, people who could help me get internships, job opportunities after graduation. I can't have you there making me look less than. Less than what? The words came out as a whisper. Less than worthy of their attention. Less than someone they'd want to invest in. Mom, you work at a dental office. You drive a car that's falling apart. You shop at discount stores and think Olive Garden is fine dining. These people live in a different world, and I need to be part of that world if I'm going to succeed. Each word was a dagger, precisely aimed at the parts of me that were already wounded. She wasn't just uninviting me from her party. She was rejecting everything I was, everything I had worked to become, everything I had sacrificed to give her. I've worked 3 jobs to pay for your college applications, I said, my voice shaking. I've gone without so you could have everything you needed. I've loved you unconditionally, supported your dreams, been proud of every single thing you've accomplished, and you're telling me I'm not good enough to celebrate your graduation? It's not about good enough, Emma said, her tone taking on an edge of impatience. It's about appropriate. You wouldn't understand the conversations, you wouldn't know how to act around these people, and honestly, it would just be uncomfortable for everyone. Tyler's mom already thinks it's weird that you're a single mother who works a blue-collar job. I don't need to give her more reasons to judge me. The casual cruelty of that statement took my breath away. Tyler's mother thought it was weird that I was a single mother, that I worked an honest job to support my family, and Emma agreed with her? So what am I supposed to do tonight? I asked. Sit at home while my daughter celebrates the biggest achievement of her life so far? You could take yourself out to dinner or something? Emma suggested, as if she were being generous. Treat yourself. You're always saying you don't do enough nice things for yourself. The suggestion was so tone-deaf, so completely missing the point, that I almost laughed. She thought I could just take myself out to dinner and pretend my heart wasn't breaking. Pretend my own daughter hadn't just told me I was too embarrassing to be seen with at the most important event of her young life. Emma, I said, trying one last time to reach the little girl I had raised, the child who used to tell me I was her hero. Do you remember when you were 8 and you had pneumonia? I sat by your bed for 3 days straight, holding your hand, singing to you, making sure you knew you weren't alone. Do you remember when you wanted to quit dance because the other girls were mean to you, and I convinced you to stick with it because I believed in you? Do you remember all the times I cheered for you, supported you, loved you even when you made mistakes? For just a moment, I thought I saw something flicker in her eyes, a shadow of the daughter I used to know. But it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. That was different, she said. That was when I was a kid. This is about my adult life, my future. I need you to understand that sometimes love means letting go, means not making everything about yourself. Making everything about myself? I had spent 18 years making everything about her, and now she was accusing me of being selfish for wanting to celebrate her graduation. That night, I sat alone in our apartment while my daughter celebrated at a country club across town. I looked at the graduation gift I had bought her, a beautiful leather portfolio with her initials embossed in gold, something she could use in college and beyond. I had saved for months to buy it, imagining the moment I would give it to her, the smile on her face, the hug she would give me. Instead, it sat on my coffee table, wrapped and ready for a celebration that would never come. As I sat there in the silence, something inside me finally broke. Not just my heart, that had been breaking for months, something deeper, more fundamental. the part of me that had believed love was enough, that sacrifice would be rewarded, that being a good mother meant my daughter would always love and respect me in return. I realized in that moment of complete devastation that I had raised a stranger. The little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who used to tell me she wanted to be just like me when she grew up, who used to say I was the best mommy in the whole world. That little girl was gone. In her place was a young woman who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to overcome, an embarrassment to hide, a reminder of a life she wanted to leave behind. But as I sat there in the wreckage of our relationship, something else began to stir, something I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't sadness or hurt or even anger. It was resolve, cold, hard, unshakable resolve. Emma thought she knew who I was. She thought I was just a struggling single mother with no power, no influence, no ability to affect her perfect new life. She had no idea what I was really capable of, no idea what I had been building while she was busy being ashamed of me. She was about to find out that the woman she had just discarded like yesterday's newspaper was far more than she had ever imagined. And when that revelation came, when the truth finally surfaced, she would learn that respect isn't something you can choose to give or withhold. Sometimes it's something that's demanded, whether you're ready to give it or not. Você está certo, peço desculpas. Os capítulos ficaram muito extensos, com mais de 10. 000 caracteres cada quando o solicitado era 5.300, 6.000 caracteres. 935, 1,75 palavras. Vou refazer os capítulos com o tamanho correto. Aqui estão os capítulos 6-10 no tamanho adequado. What Emma didn't know was that her embarrassing mother had been quietly building an empire for 15 years. While she complained about my old car and modest apartment, I had been making strategic investments that would shock her into silence. It started with my grandmother's inheritance, $15,000 that most single mothers would have spent immediately. Instead, I used it as a down payment on a small duplex in a gentrifying neighborhood. I spent evenings learning to repair drywall and fix leaky faucets while Emma played in the yard, completely unaware her mother was building our financial future. The rental income allowed me to save aggressively. Within 3 years, I bought a 4-unit apartment building, then another property, then another. I studied the market obsessively, attended seminars, learned from experienced investors. Emma was too busy being ashamed of me to notice that I was becoming one of the city's largest property owners. By her high school years, I owned 7 properties generating substantial rental income, more than double my dental office salary. But I kept working, kept living modestly, kept driving my reliable Honda. I was protecting myself from disappointment, having learned not to trust Emma with information about my successes. The real breakthrough came when I met Marcus Chen, a developer seeking silent partners for a major downtown project. I invested $200,000, money accumulated through years of careful saving. 6 months later, my investment had tripled. Suddenly, I wasn't just a small-time landlord, but a serious real estate investor. But Emma knew none of this. To her, I remained the embarrassing mother who worked at a dental office. When she criticized our apartment, she had no idea I owned the entire building. When she mocked my car, she couldn't imagine I had been pre-approved for any vehicle I wanted. The apartment we lived in? I was actually her landlord, writing rent checks to myself. As her graduation approached and her cruelty intensified, I made strategic decisions. I contacted my lawyer to update my will and property deeds. I also made some interesting purchases: the building where Emma worked part-time, the apartment complex where Tyler's family lived, and I became an investor in the catering company that served her graduation party venue. Emma thought she was escaping into an adult world where her mother's influence couldn't reach. She had no idea that her mother's influence was already woven throughout every aspect of her life. The night of her graduation party, as I sat alone in my apartment, the apartment I owned, in the building I owned, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: pure, calculating power. Emma wanted to exclude me because she thought I wasn't worthy of her new world. She was about to discover that her new world was built on foundations I controlled, that the independence she craved was an illusion, and that the mother she had dismissed as powerless held more influence over her life than she could possibly comprehend. The week after Emma's graduation party was surreal. On the surface, everything appeared normal. I maintained our routine while secretly orchestrating moves that would fundamentally alter Emma's life. She had no idea that while she basked in her graduation success, her mother was quietly pulling strings that would reshape her entire world. Emma's behavior was particularly galling because she interpreted my silence as defeat. Having successfully excluded me from her party, she seemed to believe she had finally put me in my place. She moved through our apartment with new confidence, as if she had won some important battle. "I'm apartment hunting with Tyler and his mom this weekend," she announced Tuesday morning, not bothering to look up from her phone. "Mrs. Harrison knows about some really nice places near the university. She said she'd help me find something appropriate for someone with my potential." I nodded silently, knowing exactly which apartments she would view. Mrs. Harrison had contacted my property management company the previous week, inquiring about availability in several of my buildings. The irony was exquisite. Tyler's mother was unknowingly asking my permission for Emma to view apartments I owned. "The rent will be expensive," Emma continued, "but Tyler's parents will help with the deposit. I just need you to co-sign since I don't have established credit yet." The casual assumption that I would co-sign for an apartment she couldn't afford, in a building she didn't know I owned, was breathtaking. "We'll see," I said mildly. Emma's head snapped up, clearly surprised by my non-committal response. "What do you mean, we'll see?" "Mom, this is important. You can't just decide not to help me because you're upset about the graduation party thing." The graduation party thing. That's how she characterized excluding me from her most important celebration. I said, "We'll see, Emma. I need to think about it." Over the following days, Emma's confidence showed cracks. She expected me to cave, to apologize, and eagerly agree to co-sign her lease. When I continued responding with phrases like, "I'm still thinking about it," she became increasingly agitated. What Emma didn't realize was that I was watching her world with new eyes, seeing connections she was blind to. The coffee shop, where she met friends, I had provided the startup loan. The boutique where she shopped, I was a partner in the investment group owning the building. The gym where Tyler worked out, I had recently purchased that property. The weekend of her apartment hunting arrived, and Emma left bubbling with excitement about her impending independence. After she left, I reviewed financial reports showing my real estate portfolio was now worth over $3 million. I could have retired years ago, could have been living in luxury, but I had chosen to maintain the facade. Sunday evening, Emma returned glowing. "Mom, the apartment is absolutely perfect. The building is so elegant, and the neighborhood is exactly where I want to be. Mrs. Harrison says it's the kind of place that will make the right impression on people who matter." People who matter. The phrase stung, but I kept my expression neutral. "It sounds lovely, honey. The rent is $1,800 a month, which I know sounds like a lot, but it's reasonable for that area. The landlord seems really professional, very selective about tenants. I think they'll approve my application, especially with your co-signature." She had no idea that I had set that rent price myself, that her approval was entirely in my hands, that the selective landlord was the same woman she had been dismissing as an embarrassment for years. That night, as Emma made excited calls about her perfect new apartment, I finalized the last details of my plan. Everything was in place. The legal documents, the financial arrangements, the strategic positioning that would soon reveal who held the real power in this relationship. Emma thought she was escaping her embarrassing mother's world. She had no idea she was moving deeper into a web I had been weaving for years. The moment of revelation came on a Tuesday morning in late June, exactly 1 week after Emma had submitted her apartment application. I had been waiting for this moment for months, carefully orchestrating every detail to ensure that when the truth emerged, it would be impossible for Emma to dismiss or rationalize away. Emma was in the kitchen making breakfast, humming as she scrolled through her phone, probably looking at furniture for her new apartment. She had been in an exceptionally good mood, buoyed by the belief that her application had been approved and she was finally escaping her mother's limitations. "Good morning, honey," I said, entering the kitchen with a manila envelope containing documents that would change everything between us. "Morning, Mom," she replied without looking up. "I should hear about the apartment today. I'm so excited I can barely stand it." I sat across from her at our small kitchen table, the same table where we had shared thousands of meals, where I had helped with homework, where we had talked about her dreams. It seemed fitting that this conversation would happen here. "Emma, we need to talk," I said, setting the envelope on the table. Something in my tone caught her attention. She looked up, her expression shifting from contentment to concern. "What's wrong? You look serious." I am serious. There are things you need to know. I opened the envelope and began removing documents, property deeds, financial statements, business licenses, investment portfolios. Emma's eyes widened as papers accumulated on the table. "What is all this?" she asked, reaching for a property deed. "This is the ownership document for this building. The apartment we've been living in? I own it. I own the entire building." I watched her face as the words sank in. "I write checks to myself, Emma, to my property management company. You've been living in an apartment owned by your mother while complaining about how embarrassing it is." Emma stared at the document, struggling to process what I was telling her. "What do you mean you own it? We pay rent. I've seen you write the checks." I continued removing documents. "This is the deed to my first investment property. This is the 4-unit building on Oak Avenue. This is the commercial property where Tyler's parents' restaurant is located." I paused, watching her face. "Tyler's parents are my tenants, Emma. They're currently 3 months behind on rent." Emma's face went pale. "I don't understand. How is this possible? You work at a dental office. You drive an old car." "Because I chose to live modestly while building something bigger. Every dollar I didn't spend on luxury went into investments. While you were embarrassed by my Honda and discount clothes, I was quietly becoming one of the largest property owners in this city." I pulled out a financial statement. "This is my current net worth, Emma. $3.7 million. The woman you've been treating as an embarrassment is worth nearly $4 million. Emma grabbed the statement with shaking hands. "This can't be real. If you have all this money, why do we live like this?" "Because I was building security, creating options, establishing a foundation that couldn't be shaken. And because I wanted to see who you really were, if you would love and respect me for who I am, not for what I could buy you." The silence was deafening. When Emma finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "The apartment I applied for? I own that building too. The unit you fell in love with? I personally oversaw its renovation. I selected every detail you've been gushing about." Emma's hands trembled. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me think?" "Let you think what? That I was a failure? You made those assumptions, Emma. You decided that because I drove an old car and worked a modest job, I must be pathetic. You never asked about my investments, never wondered how I afforded your activities on a receptionist's salary." Emma was crying now. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I never meant—" "You never meant what? To exclude me from your graduation? To tell me I was too embarrassing to be seen with? You spent years making me feel small while I was building an empire you're completely dependent on." "What do you mean, dependent on?" "Your apartment application was rejected. Not because of your credit, but because I decided that someone who finds her mother too embarrassing doesn't deserve to live in a property I own." Emma's face went white. "You can't do that. That's not fair. I need that apartment." "Fair? Was it fair when you mocked my car? When you excluded me from your graduation? When you treated me like something to be ashamed of? But I'm your daughter. You're supposed to love me unconditionally." "I did love you unconditionally, Emma. For 18 years. I sacrificed everything for your happiness, built a fortune to secure your future. You repaid that love with contempt and humiliation. Now you're going to learn what it feels like to live without the support system you took for granted." "What are you saying?" "Your college fund is being redirected to charity. The co-signing you need won't come from me. The financial safety net you never knew existed is being removed. You're going to discover what independence really means." Emma stood abruptly. "You can't do this to me. I made mistakes, but you can't abandon me." "I'm not abandoning you, Emma. I'm giving you exactly what you wanted, independence from your embarrassing mother. You wanted a life without me? Now you get to find out what that looks like." As I walked toward the door, Emma called after me, her voice breaking. "Mom, please, I'm sorry. I know I hurt you, but please don't do this. I need you." I turned back one last time. "You should have thought about that before you decided I wasn't good enough to celebrate your graduation. Love isn't just a word, Emma. It's respect, gratitude, kindness. You may love me, but you don't respect me. And respect isn't optional." The reckoning had finally come. The weeks following my revelation were emotionally complex. I watched Emma's world unravel with a mixture of satisfaction and sorrow that I'm still trying to understand. She had spent years making me feel powerless and insignificant. Now she was discovering how thoroughly her life had been built on foundations I controlled. Within days, the scope of Emma's dependence became devastatingly clear. Tyler's parents received an eviction notice for their restaurant. I had decided 3 months of unpaid rent was enough. The coffee shop where Emma met friends suddenly couldn't afford extended hours because I called in my loan. The boutique where she shopped closed temporarily when my investment group decided to renovate. But the most crushing blow came when Emma tried to find alternative housing. She assumed that with good grades and a clean background, finding another apartment would be simple. What she didn't realize was that in a city where I owned or had connections to most desirable rental properties, her options were severely limited. Emma's desperation grew daily. She called repeatedly, her messages evolving from angry demands to tearful pleas. "Mom, please, I understand you're upset, but this is going too far. I can't find anywhere to live. Tyler's family is talking about leaving town. Please, can we just talk?" But I wasn't ready to talk. For years, I had swallowed hurt and made excuses for her cruelty. Now, Emma was experiencing consequences, and I wanted her to fully understand what those felt like. The breaking point came 3 weeks later. Emma appeared at my dental office, eyes red from crying, confidence completely shattered. She waited in the parking lot until my shift ended, then approached me at my car, the same Honda she had mocked mercilessly. "Mom, please," she whispered. "I can't do this anymore. I can't find anywhere to live, can't afford college without the money you saved, and I can't understand how everything connects to you. I feel like I'm going crazy." I looked at my daughter and saw not the cruel young woman who had excluded me, but the lost little girl I had raised. Part of me wanted to gather her in my arms and restore everything, but another part, wounded so deeply, wasn't ready to forgive easily. "Emma, do you understand now why I'm upset?" She nodded frantically. "Yes, I understand. I was horrible, ungrateful, cruel. I took everything for granted. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." "Are you sorry because you hurt me, or because you're facing consequences?" She struggled with the question. Finally, "Both. I'm sorry I hurt you, and I'm sorry I was too stupid to see what you were doing. But I'm also terrified. I don't know how to live without your help, and I'm realizing I never learned to appreciate what I had." It was the first truly honest thing she had said in years. Something inside me began to soften. Over the following months, I watched Emma begin learning. I didn't restore her trust fund or co-sign her lease, but I didn't leave her completely without resources. I helped her find a small studio in one of my older buildings, not the luxury unit she wanted, but clean and safe. I let her work part-time for my property management company, learning about the business I had built while she was ashamed of me. Most importantly, I required her to earn back trust and respect through actions, not words. She had to prove she understood the value of what I had given her, that she appreciated my sacrifices, that she saw me as worthy of love and respect rather than just financial support. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, arguments, moments when I wondered if I was too harsh or if she could truly change. But gradually, I began seeing glimpses of the daughter I had hoped she could become. Grateful instead of entitled, respectful instead of dismissive, appreciative instead of always wanting more. The revenge was complete, but it had evolved into something more complex than simple retribution. It became a lesson in consequences, a masterclass in the difference between love and respect, a painful but necessary education in gratitude and humility. Emma learned that the mother she had dismissed as powerless held the keys to everything she wanted. More importantly, she learned those keys came with responsibilities, that privilege must be earned through respect, and that taking someone's love for granted is one of the cruelest betrayals. I learned that love without boundaries isn't really love, it's enablement. Sometimes the most loving thing is letting someone face consequences. I learned that respect, once lost, must be earned back through consistent action, not just apologies. The woman who once felt small and powerless had discovered her strength, demanded the respect she deserved, and used her power not just for revenge, but for education. It was painful for both of us, but necessary. Emma would never again take for granted the love and sacrifice of those who cared for her. And I would never again allow anyone to make me feel ashamed of who I was or what I had accomplished. 2 years have passed since that devastating morning when I revealed the truth about who I really was. 2 years since Emma's world crumbled and she confronted the reality of her cruelty. 2 years since I made the hardest decision of my life, to prioritize my dignity over my daughter's immediate comfort. Those years have been transformative for both of us in ways I never imagined. Rebuilding our relationship was neither quick nor easy. There were months when I wondered if I had been too harsh, if my need for justice had overshadowed my love. There were nights when I questioned whether I had irreparably damaged our bond. But there were also moments when I saw glimpses of who Emma was becoming, and I knew the pain had been worth it. Emma's transformation didn't happen overnight. The first months were marked by anger, resentment, and desperate attempts to find ways around the consequences I had imposed. She tried getting loans without my co-signature, applied for apartments I didn't own, even reached out to distant relatives. But gradually, as she faced rejection after rejection, something inside her shifted. The turning point came when Emma accepted the studio apartment I offered in one of my older buildings. It was basic, furnished with second-hand pieces she bought herself, but it was hers, earned through her job at my property management company. I watched her learn to budget, prioritize expenses, appreciate simple comforts she had taken for granted. For the first time, she was truly independent. Working for my company gave Emma an inside view of the empire I had built. She saw the complexity of managing multiple properties, the financial planning required, the countless hours of work behind every decision. She began understanding that what she had perceived as limitations were actually strategic choices, that my modest lifestyle had been deliberate sacrifice to build something larger. More importantly, she began seeing me differently. The woman she had dismissed as embarrassing was revealed as a shrewd businesswoman who had built a multi-million-dollar empire from nothing. The mother she thought was pathetic was someone others respected and sought advice from. But the most significant change wasn't her newfound respect for my business acumen. It was her growing understanding of what I had sacrificed for her. As she struggled on her entry-level salary, learned to cook and manage her schedule, she began appreciating the countless ways I had made her life easier without her noticing. The apologies, when they came, were different from her initial desperate pleas. These were thoughtful, specific acknowledgments of particular hurts. She apologized for mocking my car, excluding me from graduation, treating me like an embarrassment. But more than that, she apologized for taking my love for granted, for assuming my sacrifices were obligations rather than gifts. "Mom," she said one evening as we shared takeout in her small apartment, "I need you to know that I understand now what I put you through. Every time I rolled my eyes at your clothes or acted ashamed of you, I was rejecting not just your choices, but your love. I was telling you that everything you had done wasn't enough, that you weren't enough. I'm so sorry." It was the conversation I had waited for, the acknowledgement I needed. But by then, I had already begun healing. The process of standing up for myself, demanding respect, refusing treatment that diminished my worth, that had been its own therapy. I had rediscovered my strength, my value, my right to dignity. As we rebuilt our relationship, I also rebuilt my own life. For years, I had defined myself primarily as Emma's mother. The forced separation gave me space to remember who I was beyond motherhood: a successful businesswoman, a strategic thinker, a person with dreams and ambitions. I retired from the dental office and managed my portfolio full-time. I bought a beautiful house, furnished it with pieces I loved, bought a new car, began traveling. Most importantly, I began seeing myself through my own eyes rather than through Emma's judgment. Today, Emma and I have a relationship stronger and more honest than ever before. She works full-time for my company, having proven herself capable and trustworthy. She lives in a nicer apartment earned through her own work, drives a car she bought herself, takes pride in her independence while appreciating the foundation I provided. More importantly, she treats me with respect and consideration I should have demanded years earlier. She asks about my day, values my opinions, includes me in her plans out of genuine desire for my company. She has learned to see me as a complete person with my own needs and feelings. The lesson I want to share is this: love without respect isn't really love. It's dependency masquerading as affection. For years, I enabled Emma's disrespectful behavior by providing unconditional support regardless of treatment. I thought I was being a good mother, but I was teaching her that my love could be taken for granted. Sometimes, the most loving thing is refusing to accept unacceptable behavior, even from your own child. Sometimes, love requires boundaries, consequences, and willingness to endure temporary pain for long-term growth. I learned it's never too late to demand the respect you deserve. The empire I built became the foundation not just for financial security, but for self-respect and dignity. But the most important legacy is the relationship Emma and I have now, built on mutual respect, genuine appreciation, and honest communication. We both learned that family relationships require effort, consideration, and respect from all parties. Love is not just a feeling but a choice. To treat each other with kindness, appreciate what we have, prioritize each other's well-being and dignity. The old car Emma once mocked still sits in my garage, a reminder of our journey from taking each other for granted to genuine mutual respect. Our story is one of redemption, growth, and the power of demanding better for ourselves and from those we love. The strength that remains is not just financial. It's the strength that comes from knowing your worth, building relationships based on respect, and refusing treatment that diminishes your dignity. True power comes not from controlling others, but from respecting yourself enough to demand the treatment you deserve.